Mary Jane Watson might be Spider-Man's most well-known love interest. Aside from her being his primary love interest in both Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland's movies, she's also the one that Peter usually settles down and marries in the comics. However, she was noticeably absent from the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies. But what if she wasn't? So now in this version, Peter does still have feelings for Gwen Stacy. Let's just get this out of the way. Peter is going to end up with Gwen in this timeline, at least for now. However, we do at least meet Mary Jane Watson, but probably not in the place that anyone would want to meet somebody, at a grief counseling session. So yes, in this version, Mary Jane, played by Shailene Woodley, meets Peter under not so great circumstances, and something that should be pointed out is that she's not a high schooler in this version. I've always kind of liked the idea of Gwen being Peter's high school love interest, so that's what I'm going to be going with here. So now MJ is actually a year older than Peter and is a freshman in college. So now the pair first meet each other after Aunt May convinces Peter to begin attending grief counseling after the death of Uncle Ben. And we learned through the first support group meeting that Mary Jane lost her mother in this timeline. She died when she was just in middle school, which kind of forced MJ to begin a modeling career on the side that she didn't want to do, in order to support her family. And now she doesn't hate being a model, but she also isn't the biggest fan of it because she doesn't want that career to define how people see her. Her actual ambition is to become a movie actress. I decided to have that instead of a stage actress in this timeline, just to be a little bit different. So now it should be noted that Peter's not exactly being all that cooperative with the meetings. He refuses to talk most of the time, and he often storms out to look for Uncle Ben's killer. And now, something else I should note is that in this version, Peter does not become Spider-Man while looking for Ben's killer. That doesn't happen because, personally, I don't feel like he was ready to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man should not be used as a symbol for hatred or revenge. It's meant to inspire hope. Hope that Peter doesn't have yet, so he's not Spider-Man yet. He doesn't finally earn the right to be Spider-Man until after the bridge scene. He lets the little boy he saved keep his old mask, and he goes off to design a new one. So now MJ actually doesn't like Peter that much yet. You see, it kind of offends her that he keeps leaving as though he's above the meetings. He doesn't really take it that seriously, and she understands he's going through grief and that people have different ways of processing it, but she can't help being just a little bit offended by his attitude. So one night she tries following him out of the meeting, just to talk to him and figure out what his deal is, and that's when she sees Peter swinging off on his newly created web shooters. And it's in this moment that she stops disliking him. However, she decides to keep what she's learned to herself. Now, in the last scene of the movie, we see Peter finally open up at grief counseling, and he talks about how he blames himself for his uncle's death. And this is a very hard thing for Peter to do, but opening up helps him to move on somewhat. It also makes MJ want to be there for him, since she knows the struggle he's going through as Spider-Man now. So now we actually don't see too much of MJ in the sequel, because I'm sorry, that movie just had way too much going on as it is, but we do see her and Peter becoming proper friends in this version. So now Gwen unfortunately still dies as she did, and MJ tries to be there for Peter at her funeral, but he kind of lashes out at her a bit because of his grief. He tells her that she doesn't understand what he's going through, and she tries to tell him that yes, she does, but she refrains because she understands he needs space right now. Now as he did, he retires from being Spider-Man for a few months. New York's crime rate ends up going way up in his absence. However, Aunt May just can't get Peter to come back out into the world again. This may be the end, not only for Spider-Man, but also for Peter Parker. That is until he gets a visit from Mary Jane. In this conversation, she tells him that she does know what he's going through, and we finally hear the exact story of how her mother got sick when she was young, and how she did everything she could to take care of her. She set aside her ambitions of becoming an actress, she barely attended school, and she lost most of her friends, but she never lost hope. And she reveals that her mother's dying words were, It's not your fault. MJ then pulls out a newspaper asking where is Spider-Man on it, and she reiterates it's not your fault, Peter. And Peter is shocked. He doesn't know what to say, and he just asks, how long have you known? She smiles with tears in her eyes and just says, a while. MJ then takes Peter's hand and puts the newspaper in it. He looks down at it for a long time, before we then see him return as Spider-Man to fight the Rhino. So yeah, that's basically my take. It's a very cheerful scenario, isn't it? Well, just to be honest, if you're wondering where the grief counseling stuff came from, apparently that was going to be the plan. They actually were going to introduce these two through grief counseling sessions in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but all four scenes ended up on the cutting room floor, so that's why I'm sticking with that story. I'm sure that some of you were hoping I would go for a different, more cheerful way of having them meet each other, but personally, and this is just my personal preference, I actually agree with their decision to cut her because I just think if they introduced Mary Jane in The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2, it would just make it a lot more obvious that Gwen's not going to stick around. It would just make it so much more obvious that she's probably going to die. And I don't want it to be so obvious. Like, yeah, she dies in the comics, but, you still want that emotion. You still want, to be sad. You still want people to be sad when she dies. And I feel like Mary Jane's presence would make it way too obvious, personally. But, I do like the idea of them meeting at grief counseling, because it's way different than in the Raimi movies, because people complain that the Amazing Spider-Man was way too similar to, the Raimi movies. And I think the idea of these two meeting at grief counseling would be very different, and different in a good way. I think it's a way that would really work, honestly, because they would both be able to know what each other is going through. And I think Mary Jane would be there for him when Gwen died, if she had, been there. I just think it would have really worked, in the long run, that is. If they had introduced her in The Amazing Spider-Man 3, I would be fine with it, but I am glad that she wasn't in the first two, personally, anyway. And yeah, I'm sure that I made some controversial decisions, sorry. Like, I know that having Mary Jane not like Peter at first is kind of weird. I honestly, I kind of did that because I was watching a movie earlier, and it had, a love interest in it that was, like, pining for the main character, but he's so oblivious, he doesn't see it, and it's, like, this unrequited crush, and I just remember thinking, like, how many times have I seen that, And I just wanted to do something different when I did this. I just wanted to do something where she doesn't like him at first. I didn't want her to, like, look at him and be like, oh, I like him, I want to be with him, oh, I just wish Gwen would go away. I was really hoping that wouldn't happen. So I didn't want to do that. I hope you guys can understand. I just wanted to do something different, and it's okay if you guys don't like it. I'm really sorry if you don't. I just wanted to do something that was different, just to make it not so cliche. And yeah, so as I said, I think these two meeting through grief would be a tragic way to meet the love of your life, but it would also be a way that would be refreshing, and a way I think that these two could have some really emotional interactions with one another. I just think it would be great. And Shailene Woodley, man, she is so talented. Even her worst movies, she's always the best part in it, usually. So, the fact that she didn't actually get to be in Spider-Man is really sad, in my opinion. Like, yeah, I'm happy her scenes got cut, because I don't think they were in the right place, but I do wish she eventually got to play Mary Jane, because she would have been fantastic. And I do hope eventually Shailene Woodley does appear in at least one superhero movie, whether that be DC or Marvel. I would just love to see her in one of those movies. I think that she could really do something special. And maybe if they do The Amazing Spider-Man 3, because I keep hearing rumors that they're going to do it now, maybe they'll bring her in for that. I hope they do, if that's what they're planning to do, because I think she could really kill it. I think that Andrew Garfield is capable of having chemistry with anybody, and so is Shailene Woodley, if her movies are anything to go by. So I just think it would be a really, really good couple if they were given the chance to really flesh it out. So yeah, this is basically my take on it. I'm sure you guys have plenty of other takes. I'm sure that some of you were kind of hoping I'd get Gwen out of the picture, but as I said, I think Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone's chemistry is what really carried those movies. Like, it was probably everybody's favorite part of those movies, and why would I want to get rid of that? You know what I mean? Why would I want to do that? So I decided to just kind of keep Gwen, and then just have Mary Jane be, his emotional crutch. I don't know. That was just kind of an idea. It's completely understandable to me if you don't agree with that. But anyway, guys, let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Also, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms. And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Rinzler_Productions, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video.